You ever play TFT but conclude there wasn't enough Titanfall in it? Mechabellum has you covered. Mechabellum is a genre of game I've never really had interest in. Auto-battlers. A very quick synopsis of the genre is that you pick a set of units who fight each other, then add to and adjust them round after identifying the weaknesses of both yourself and your opponent. Underlords and the aforementioned TFT are some of the only successful mainstream ones. Both of them are from last year around this time, though I guess maybe there's also tabs, too? The auto-battlers based on the MOBA Bible games are inherently kind of hard to learn thanks to how much they rely on Dota and League for their balance. If you don't really know what Lux does, good luck guessing based on what she looks like. Mechabellum really does not have this problem, because if you see a giant mech with two flamethrowers, you can probably kind of guess what its intended role is. Its character design is all very intrinsically understandable in my experience, and here's what we got to work with. Separating all of the units into a Venn diagram based on the focus and main role of the unit came out like this, at least for my experience. The different roles that units tended to fall under were either about being single-target assassination, serving as chaff, or utilizing their tankiness. Keep in mind that the following is with a big fat "in general" in front of it, but generally, chaff counters assassins, who themselves counter tanks, who counter chaff. Being up here in the assassin section means that the unit prioritizes single-target elimination and focusing down specific enemies, often at the expense of their own survivability. The marksman and phoenix are perfect examples of this, as they are exceptionally high damage killing machines, but they die very quickly. I didn't just mark this as DPS, though, because that's not really the focus. It's on countering specific types of enemies. For example, the Stormcaller eats chaff, the Melting Point consumes giant units, and the Mustang chews up birds, but each are specialized towards that. Not all of them can be used for the same job. Being tanky implies what it means on the tin. You can take a lot of punishment. This trio down here sit awfully close to chaff due to their shared ability to buy the armor enhancement upgrade, which makes them practically immune to certain units. The Fortress and Rhino sit firmly in this part too, thanks to their incredible survivability, especially Gigakus Chadius. Christ. The Rhino even comes with the Chad hair tuff. The Vulcan and Steel Balls sit teetering on the edge between being a tank and an assassin, because while they are huge, tanky units, their main use is removing a certain type of unit from the game, being those chaff and high health tanks respectively. Balls have infinitely ramping damage against whoever they're attacking, and while that's terrible for low health swarms, it can make even the highest health fortress cry. The last section of units are meat for the grinder. Chaff gets its name from real-life countermeasures used to distract missile systems, and that alone should probably tell you enough about the role of these units. They run in to get shot to screen for the rest of your force as they get into position. The hacker is largely included here not because the hacker themselves wants to get shot, but their main focus, from my experience, is to turn enemy units into chaff to get slaughtered and distract the enemy from your actual forces. Almost every unit in Mechabellum has god-awful turning speeds, so forcing, say, a unit of sledgehammers to slowly teeter to the side and then back is a huge waste of time for them. Another reason I've thrown hackers into the deep end of chaff is that hackers absolutely require a solid front line of chaff supporting them to be effective, far more so than other units, thanks to their extremely brittle nature. The Mustangs are precisely two specializations. Either remove air units from the game, or remove artillery from the game. They do both jobs incredibly, but aren't good for much else. This wonderful unit in the middle is the most generally applicable unit in all of Mechabellum. Fangs. They've got the numbers of chaff, 18 in total, the tankiness of gods, especially with the personal shield upgrade essentially doubling their health, which, when purchased on a Fang-centric army, usually results in
I'm gonna take 2,000 damage.
And their raw mass leads to enormous damage outputs when properly supported. However, it's not just like you throw these things down and that's the end of it. These roles are only true assuming you're utilizing the proper tactics and positioning required to bring out those qualities in these units. Fangs can be it all, but only when supported in specific ways. They can be all three, but probably not at once, because how you're placing them reinforces which role you're trying to use. If they're in front of the rest of your force, you're probably utilizing them as chaff or tanks, whereas if you hide them behind tankier units like sledgehammers, you're likely utilizing them more as assassins to counter air units or the like. Positioning is a truly massive part of this game, and it's what sets it apart from many other games I've played. It feels truly strategic and tactical. You can't just pick your units off a counter list and win. You have to think about how to properly apply them to your situation via adequate positioning and upgrades. This gives it an extremely unique feel from pretty much any other tactical game I've ever played. Sure, positioning is a mechanic in, like, StarCraft, but it's much more focused on how much you can slam your keyboard and rack cracked APM numbers rather than how much you can outthink your enemy with your huge brain. As the title implies, I have played a couple dozen hours of this game already, and a good chunk of that has been with one person. You should move your fangs to the other side, because I'm just going to let you know as a nice Samaritan that they will get destroyed instantly.
See, and that's why we're friends, Cassius.
Mm-hmm.
Friends help each other.
Thank you.
You like me.
I was very surprised by how much of the tactical depth remains even when playing against only one opponent. Due to the way that matches are formatted, it has yet to get stale or devolve into samey strategies, and here is why. When a match begins, you get a selection between 4 commanders who have different units, HP, and a battlefield specialization. The units are pretty self-explanatory. You always get 3 of the less expensive unit, and 2 of the more expensive one. The commander specialization can be a variety of buffs, from something kind of small, like changing unit speed, to changing the way that you fundamentally interact with unit XP. There's only 4 to choose from about a dozen options total though, so the choices aren't ever like super overwhelming. The last stat that changes the commander's HP, which is a factor of how good their specialization and units are. The better of a start it is, the less HP they have, generally. From there, you get a set amount of money every turn, and you spend it on units, upgrades for those units, 1 round deployables to take the form of missiles and shields, and the pre-round reinforcement cards which give various bonuses or provide deployables in and of themselves. Any units that are still alive at the end of a round deal damage to the enemy's HP based on their size, doing anywhere from 6 to 400 damage depending on how large they are. That's pretty much the game. It sounds really simple when summarized like this, but there is so much goddamn depth here. Every single round, you're not just assessing the enemy composition, but what they might be doing, and how to counter that and set yourself up best for the future. Sandbagging some early rounds for a financial lead later is totally viable as money carries over between rounds. And setting up 40 balls and just hoping they kill the enemy by running at them is also viable. The reinforcements you get between rounds also give you the perfect opportunity to pivot if you see an opportunity. When the situation permits it, I absolutely love full speccing into fangs and creating the grand army of the Republic. They also do decent with my second love, hackers. They're kind of shit and extremely fragile, but when properly supported they can be a total nightmare. It is so absurdly funny to turn your friends' balls or fortresses against them. In fact, I would like to declare myself the world's first hacker main, and I will be purchasing giant lime green hackers with beanies when the store comes out, just like the skunts of yore. I am genuinely convinced hackers are actually quite good, and I think this is a rerun of the Nagoriyuki situation from Strive's release. People were convinced he was terrible until he rocked up and just won Evo. Hackers are good, people simply haven't worked out how to use them yet. But I can't exactly blame them. The investment cost is insane, and they're so fragile that it's super easy to fuck up their placement. Like I said though, investing so heavily into a specific unit isn't something that you can do every game. The composition that you start with, the enemy starts with, and the specialists you pick heavily influence your tactics. If they start Arclights and Stormcallers and you try to arbitrarily full pivot into Fangs because you think they're cool, you will just lose. As a result, there hasn't really been a super dominant meta that I've run into. The balance feels very dynamic and every unit has its place, but if you were playing in Super Elo, maybe there is like a really stale meta, but I don't know, it feels pretty good to me. The AI in Mechabellum is also really good. I genuinely mean it when I say that you could exclusively play this game against the AI and it would be a good time. Every single timer has been extended out to a swift 2.5 hours, so if you really need to, you can go take a break to eat dinner in the middle of a match to consider your options, come back, and then resume. Pretty much the only thing I would like to request to make the game better would be a movement indicator. There is this exceptionally helpful red line which shows which enemy the unit you've selected will focus when the round begins, and even though it does lie to you sometimes, it's still really helpful. Unfortunately, it doesn't show when they will collide. Currently, you pretty much just have to kind of eyeball your placements and guess what movement speeds actually mean in practice, and if you get it wrong, you're kind of fucked. Letting you inch units like one space every round might be a half-decent band-aid fix, but I don't know if that's against the spirit of the genre. It's just a little irritating to realize you've misplaced your Arclights by like an inch, and now your strategy is kind of boned. A change like this definitely isn't necessary though, because even when this happens, it's not like your game is over. You can fix the situation by placing additional supporting elements on top of the ones that you already have, and that totally shakes stuff up. one element of your force should probably not be relied upon so heavily that if it's misplaced, you lose. That's not even like game advice, that is just real life tactics advice. I highly recommend this game to anyone who is even remotely interested. It's absurdly cheap and the best in the genre. I didn't just bring up tabs earlier for fun, I really do wish that game had this game's multiplayer mechanics and an upped unit cap. I think it'd be a pretty great, much more lighthearted game if it copied this game's formula. Honestly, that might be one of the biggest compliments I've ever given a game ever. I wish other games were just more like this one.
Oh, and if a Mechabellum dev ever stumbles across this video, please let the hacker move while hacking with the multiple arms upgrade like the melting point can with its equivalent upgrade. Thanks. Love you guys.
Apologies if you notice my voice is a bit rough. I'm recording this after GMing Lancer where I talked for about 4 hours straight and my throat's not feeling very great. Thanks to all my patrons. You're all quite wonderful people. Love you all.